Good afternoon out there in YouTube land. This is Tom Connors of Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge After Dark. Welcome to our horror podcast. With me, as always, is Suzanne Layton from 1428 Elm. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Tom. How about you?
Doing awesome. And we also have Mecha Random 42, as always.
Hello.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful.
Awesome. We got a lot to talk about, and we don't have a ton of time. We got a few viewers already, so we're not going to waste too much time here. But yeah, if you get a chance to and you love horror news, the best place to go for that is Susan's website called 1428. Or, well, you're the editor over there anyway. I don't know. You don't necessarily own it per se.
No, that's a fan-sided thing. But yeah, I do. I'm one of the editors over there at 1428 Elm.
And of course, you're on Nerdrotic quite a bit.
Yes.
Who is a good friend of ours, and on the Tribunal as well. Gary is, and we have that coming up tonight, so we have to kind of get through this fast, guys, but that's all right. We got a lot to talk about. First up, we have this Friday the 13th situation. We talked a little bit about this in other areas. We did a mini documentary introducing it about a year ago as far as what was going on, and now here we are about a year after it was announced that it was happening. The trial is finally ended, and a winner has been named, and that winner is Mr. Victor Miller. I'm not going to get too much into the I'm going to let you set it up, Susan. So tell us what you know so far about this, or at least what you guys had reported over there at 1428, and then we'll get into the whole nitty-gritty of it and what it all means.
Sure. Well, basically, everybody knows about this lawsuit, and it's really messed a lot of things up in the franchise. There's a lot of unhappy people with Friday the 13th, the game, because they had to stop all their development activities. And apparently, it all started because Sean Cunningham alleged that Victor Miller wrote Friday the 13th, and it was like a work for hire, basically. And Cunningham said that he came up with the ideas to make it, the franchise that it is today. And there's, there was a lot of things about Victor Miller was terminated, and basically the script that he wrote, which is, that he says is a work for hire under copyright law. Basically what that means is that it wasn't eligible for termination. So his attorney was arguing that the screenplay was commissioned by, as part of the motion picture. Right.
And what you're referring to is where a writer can go back and claim his rights to his characters or franchise if he sold the rights 35 years after the fact, like James Cameron did with Terminator, or is in the process of doing with Terminator while actually still working on the next movie, I guess.
Yeah.
And if Wes Craven was alive, he could theoretically do the same for Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy, actually. But yeah, that's where it gets us to the next part here is what actually is considered a part of the deal that Victor Miller actually created, and what Sean Cunningham created, and where the rights actually lie, correct?
Yeah, and basically they went in favor of Victor Miller and against the producers of Horror Inc. They didn't really disclose all the details, but now Miller's retaining the Friday the 13th rights. However, it's the rights before the hockey mask. Because we all remember that Jason in the original, where Mrs. Voorhees was the killer, Jason pretty much wore a sack over his face. In the
sequel, yes. In the original film, he was just a kid who drowned in the water, and he was just and the storyline, and I think the reason why Victor Miller won this case was the original storyline was pretty much a reversal on Psycho. And he has said that for many, many years. And I think that's what won him the case because, Sean Cunningham probably came up with the Friday the 13th name, which I'm pretty sure he proved that. And he came up with the idea to set it at a campground. But other than that, I think it's all Victor Miller.
Right. So now this becomes very much like the Evil Dead franchise with different people owning different pieces. And then that's when it gets messy because apparently they can continue with Friday the 13th, but they can't use certain canon, items from the originals that they've done.
Right.
And,
as best as I can figure is Jason, and they even said it in the ruling, I believe, the adult form of Jason is not included in this lawsuit. So New Line Cinema technically still owns Jason. That's okay. What isn't okay then would be anything that's in the first movie, I'm assuming. So Mrs. Voorhees would be off limits. The actual origin of Jason would be off limits then. Camp Crystal Lake itself may be off limits. That doesn't mean you can't put it in another campground.
Well,
but
yeah,
what
they've had other campgrounds.
Yeah, and they even changed the name to Forest Green in the 6th film because they wanted to forget about the whole Jason bullshit they said or whatever.
Well,
but yeah.
And when they were going to revisit this before all of this got convoluted is they were doing an origin story on Jason. And everybody was up in arms because they were explaining how Jason got to be Jason and nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted that prequel. So, you know, obviously Sean Cunningham and company, they're very upset about that. And they feel that, they feel that he's limited. Victor Miller is limited to the original screenplay where Mrs. Voorhees was the killer. His termination notice, it doesn't support the iconic, hockey mask. So
exactly.
Sean Cunningham,
and he might actually have rights to the name Friday the 13th, though. How does that work out, though? Did they say that?
That is kind of like, let me look into that because as far as I know, yes. Okay. Apparently he can't. He has not been granted the rights to use.
That's Friday what I was thinking because I know Sean Cunningham came up with the name.
Right.
He said, and I quote, and this was in several making ofs long before this case even came to be. I wanted Victor to write something like Halloween, but set it in the woods so it would be cheap to make. As far as I can tell, that's all he really came up with. Right. So, right. Everything after that, and that's where I was saying, like, okay, from here on out, they can make as many Jason movies as they want, but they cannot say anything about, his origin, where he came from, his mother. They're going to have to change anything if they want to go back to the origin, which isn't that big of a deal with a character like Jason, because you don't really need to revisit his origin all the time.
Well, isn't that what they did with the remake anyway? They just kind of ignored it.
Yeah, they did. And then that's just it. It's like it's everybody. Well, if you look at it, the remake could be considered just a sequel to the rest of the movies because all that's doing is recapping what happened at the very end of the first movie. Yeah. And what they changed is how he got the hockey mask and some other things, and he's back and they changed Jason himself in a lot of ways. And I don't agree with the last half of the movie because I'm sorry, Jason doesn't take
exactly
prisoners. It doesn't work that way. He's not Leatherface. He's Jason. Jason kills. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's thinking he's his mother, but that's about it. See, they won't be able to do that anymore. That's about it. I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's, and if Cunningham wants to continue, he can. I don't know if Kane Hodder would be up for coming back, to reprise Jason. I don't even know if they have anything in the works right now.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, it's all kind of been at a screeching halt.
That's not totally true, actually. I think New Line did announce they were in the works of something, but that was early.
Yeah, that was earlier, before all this.
I know the big buzz is the game. That has everybody pissed off. So yes. I don't know. Well, if it's to be believed, even Victor Miller says he doesn't want to tamper with the game. But it's funny you bring up the game because the controversy behind the game is that they knew about this deadline ahead of time and they lied to their supporters and stuff and fans and said that they were going to have all this stuff done and they didn't. I know, Random, you know a little bit about this probably.
Oh yeah. Well, the issue with the game is like it was released so quickly and so buggy. Like half of the shit didn't work. Half of the time, like they've added so much content at the same time. You had three playable maps, a handful of counselors, and half the stuff didn't work. You couldn't I think even the last time I played it, which wasn't that long ago, you could step in a bear trap, but it didn't stop you if you were playing as Jason, and it was absolutely ridiculous. So, but with the game, I mean, they have so much of the lore with Pamela. You can kill Jason if you get the sweater, and
it was almost like they tried to get as much of the first film's lore in there as possible because they knew this looming deadline was happening. Never mind.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, it's fine. And and yeah, it's just so much was crammed into this with so many promises and so many oh yeah, eventually we'll have Uber Jason from Jason X, and eventually we'll have this, and eventually we'll have that. And they finally started sprinkling in like some of the real life counselors like Shelly, and they finally started giving us some more playable areas and some more different, some different versions of the map. But we never had single player mode for the longest time, and when we did, it was just Jason with bots, as far as I can remember. I never actually played it. By the time I got around, or they've got around to releasing single player mode, I was already done with it, and I put in a good 300 some hours in this game, so I played the crap out of it for a while. But yeah, it was
kind of the same thing.
Go ahead.
Player mode, I think twice. I was pissed because I've been waiting for the story mode.
Yeah, and there's no story mode, and we were even supposed to get hints of like little kid Jason, and all of these. We were supposed to get one Jason for every single movie. We didn't. There were so many. There's just so many little things wrong with this game, and every time they would release a patch, it would break. It's got a massive memory leak issue where if you have the rain on, you can kind of start to know, okay, everything's starting to lag and the game's gonna crash. You could usually time it to like a 10-minute window of when the game was going to crash. But yeah, it was a buggy mess. I mean, I love it, but it was a buggy mess.
I think what they tried to do is like they tried to emulate what Microsoft does. They release things with bugs, then they do hot fixes, then they do iterations and all that stuff. And I think they tried to go with that model, and it did not work for them at all.
Well, yeah, because it's a multiplayer only game, and yes, it's great to have the multiplayer aspect, but you really need a lot more content. And for the price point that they were charging, when it came out, it was $39.99, I believe, or it might have been $29.99. But it was an expensive game when it came out. And for the content, this should have been a $10 game. It was very similar to Dead by Daylight in that respect, where there wasn't a lot of maps, there wasn't a lot of stuff to do, there wasn't a lot of anything. And eventually, they did bring out more maps. They brought out more counselors. They brought out emojis that you could use in the game for people who didn't have microphones. They brought out costumes, and they were sprinkling out stuff, and they even brought back Kane Hodder to do a lot more kill animations, and they added a shit ton of content, but it was very much too little too late, I think, for a lot of the players, because they had moved on.
Yeah. And it's never good, even though it is a game, it's associated with the franchise. And it's never good to piss off like a section of your fans, especially gamers, because gamers are loud and they make a lot of noise. And if Cunningham tries to like do anything, I don't know how receptive fans will be to it. I don't know how, fans of Cunningham's work will be receptive to Victor Miller. I guess speaking from a writer's standpoint, it's a victory for writers, so to speak, because, they're always getting their content pinched somehow, never get the recognition that they deserve. It sounds like this lawsuit was he said, she said, which can never be, or he said, which can never really, it's hard to get all sorts of, documentation, which I'm sure they had, but frankly, I think this is a big blow to this franchise. And you know what? Maybe it's a good thing though. Maybe we let these things be a memory to the past and go, man, that was a great series. Let's revisit it on, DVD, Blu-ray, what have you, and let's create something new. This could be a positive because we need to get moving, like we had talked about last week, in a direction where we're getting new characters and we're trying something new. And maybe this is a tipping point.
Yeah, exactly. One of the issues with the game.
I got 2 possible scripts if anybody's interested. Well, I'm not kidding, but yeah.
And one of the issues with the game is that so many of the people who played the game, because we're in kind of a multiplayer day and age, a lot of the people who are picking up the game had never watched a single movie. I was on the old end of the people who were playing the game. There was just a handful of us who actually had watched Friday the 13th in the theater. I'd seen part 9 in the theater as a kid. I was way too young. And I was playing with like 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, a lot of 18, 20, 22-year-olds who didn't really care about the franchise. They just wanted the multiplayer game experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
How
exactly.
can you even be good at a game if, well, I mean, yeah, you know the technical end, but how can you really be good at the game if you've never seen the franchise and you don't understand the characters?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it is very much a cat and mouse sort of game. You have objectives like there's a car that you have to find the keys for and fill gas in and put in a battery, and different characters have different skill sets. Some of them are absolute crap at filling gas. There's a really great Friday the 13th the game, the parody animation out there. I highly recommend it. It's absolutely hilarious. But yeah, it's it's very fun, and it's very much I really loved because I'm like in the movie. You could wander around and I'm like, oh my god, I'm at Crystal Lake. Oh my god, I'm at, I'm at the house, and oh, everything looks exactly as it did in this movie or that movie, and but yeah, a lot of the younger players just didn't have the same appreciation, I think, too.
Yeah, yeah, and I like I said, this may be a blessing in disguise, because people weren't really too enthused about a new Friday the 13th coming out because they're like, man, how are they going to f this up? And, I think that's always the problem. Like, if you look at Nightmare on Elm Street 2, when Jackie, we talked about this a little bit, when Jackie Earl Haley became Freddy, that was a whole mess. And now they're talking about rebooting it again, which we talked about last week. So, I don't know. Maybe we just leave these classics like you do classic movies, like Gone with the Wind. God forbid we're never going to remake that again, I hope. Let's leave it like that and leave it as a time capsule. I mean, there's plenty of talent out there. There's plenty of people that can write, and let's just use it as a cautionary tale.
Oh, and I still go see the originals in the theater, too.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just saw Nightmare on Elm Street 1 in the theater not too long ago. They play Halloween every year in the theater. They
Yep.
play Friday the 13th. They play The Exorcist. There's no reason to remake them. I will go buy a ticket to the original.
Yeah. I mean, you can restore them and go. I'm sorry, Tom. You can restore them and go see them. So, yeah, go ahead, Tom.
No, I want you guys to finish because I have a lot to say. So
no, that's all I had to say on that subject.
Because I'm actually going to take a little bit of different angle. I don't think that there's any reason Jason should end. To me, Jason, Freddy, Chucky, all them guys, and we brought this up too last week, is there are modern, Frankenstein's monster and Dracula and all that kind of thing. So there's no reason they can't continue. And the thing here now is actually where you say it's a blessing in disguise. I think it is more so in a sense that New Line can continue to use Jason and do Jason projects. And now you're not tied to have to keep telling the damn backstory. Who cares? We already know where he came from. You don't have to tell us. Just bring him back. Here he is. Bam.
Yeah.
We don't need all that garbage.
Well, that's the fun with the serial killers. You don't really want to know their backstory because you want to be scared. The minute you know their backstory, you're like, oh, he had a bad home life.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, Jason's backstory we knew from the get-go. So I mean, we've always been kind of sympathetic or empathetic to Jason, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
In a sense that we do understand where he's coming from. The guy wants revenge. These kids didn't pay attention to him, so he died originally, or at least drift. You want to go with the logic on it. They killed his mother. The only person who loved him. So, of course, he's doing what he wants to do, and that is get revenge, and he's just going to keep doing it. So we root for him in that respect. Unlike some of the other horror monsters where, and it doesn't really matter. He's like Michael Myers. You can just plop him in anywhere. And, it doesn't even have to be in the forest. We even brought that part up. I'd love to see another Freddy versus Jason movie. Here we go. Here's the perfect opportunity. Jason's in the news. Freddy's in the news. New Line has them both back at home again. Let's do it, guys. Come on. It's
only this
why
time
not?
Put Jason on Elm Street.
Well, yeah.
Why
not? I'm all for it. Use my story idea. I don't care. Just get a hold of me. Give me a couple bucks. I'll be happy with
Suddenly
it.
Tom's pitching a script right now.
You'd probably be happy with some props.
Yeah.
Well, was it this show last week that I pitched it, or was it another show I did random? I can't remember now.
I think it was another show.
Because, Susan, you must not know my pitch, but it was basically a Freddy versus Jason pitch. And you could do it as another one. And I think it would work. I know a few people said it was a good idea. So You know, it's not that hard to do. I know they act like it is, but it isn't. And you know, it's kind of the logical next step because that's where all the movie monsters went back in the day. They went from their own thing to the versus each other to the Abbott and Costello. You know,
Well,
so maybe
I
go
think
ahead.
I was going to say, I think what's going to happen though is that idea is a good idea, but then you're going to have the argument that you're going to have the England people versus anybody that needs to be new. And I think you need to have a new Freddy and a new Jason if you do that. Because let's face it, no disrespect to Robert Englund. I love him with all my heart. And Kane Hodder. Those guys are getting up there.
Oh yeah.
You know,
the best thing though well, I'm not disagreeing with you on that, but the best part is for Robert Englund is he's behind the makeup. A lot of what Freddy's going to do is probably going to be augmented by some kind of special effect anyway. And we also brought up that even if you're doing a standard Nightmare on Elm Street movie, 9 times out of 10 he did what, a week, maybe 2 weeks on a shoot. Part 4 was the one he was on at the most, besides maybe some of the later ones. Maybe Freddy versus Jason, I think, other than that. Because other than that, he was on, I think, the first 2 movies for only a couple weeks, the third movie for a few weeks. And yeah, so it's like he's not like he's in them that much to where you could work around his schedule. And just like with Jason, and like I brought up with bringing Peter Weller back as RoboCop, why not? All you need him for is the close-ups. The rest can be a body double in his voice. You could almost do a lot of the same stuff with Freddy. You're going to have stunt doubles and stuff for anything that's going to be too dangerous anyway. So it's like, I'm not adverse to that, but we have this other angle that's going on right now is over at Warner Brothers is they just made a new deal with Legendary. And Legendary is working on getting, if they haven't already, I haven't found that yet, and I don't know if you had a chance to check into that from last week. With all the shit you do, Susan, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. No. I remember bringing up the whole whether or not they got the rights to Leatherface and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Legendary was trying to do, and Legendary, of course, is also the company that is doing the Godzilla / King Kong universe.
It's funny you should mention that because my co-editor Joey just put out an article yesterday for Texas Tuesday that we run about should we revisit Texas Chainsaw Massacre because they're considering
what I heard. Yeah, the rumor I heard was that Legendary, since they're back with Warner Brothers,
right?
Like, well, they've been working with them, but now they actually have a big deal with them again, like they did years ago until they walked away for a while. Now they come back. I can't remember who they went to, if it was Universal or I can't remember where it was, but so now their idea though is, from what I hear, they want to get their hands on Leatherface. And then they're going to sweet talk Warner Brothers and work out a deal, since the Godzilla movies and King Kong movies have been doing so well, that they want to do the same thing with Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface.
Yeah.
I'm not against that. As long as you get Robert Englund involved, I'm on board. And that's my only thing, is it doesn't matter who plays Jason, doesn't matter who plays Leatherface. I love Kane Hodder to death, but like you said, I don't even know if he could handle it anymore.
Yeah,
Robert's a little different story. So I mean, you can hide him in makeup, and you don't need him to do the physical activity as much as you do Kane.
Well, they did get Kane back for the game, though.
Like well, just that's a year ago. Yeah, that's different. I mean,
it depends.
I mean, they motion captured him, so
yeah, it depends on what the actors want to do, where they are in their career, what they want to do. Now Englund's donning the makeup, as we talked about for the Goldbergs. That was a huge story. Maybe Englund would come back. I know he doesn't want to. Maybe he would, but why not even do an Expendables of horror with all of the horrific idols?
I think that's kind of what they're working towards.
Yeah.
And Pinhead's rights are kind of up in the air right now too. And I swear I just seen something about that. And you just reminded me, that was something I wanted to bring up on the show, but we'll have to look into it for next week because we probably won't have the time. But there was something going on with a reboot of Hellraiser, and I didn't really get to go into it. So I wanted to get into that too, but I totally spaced it out. So we'll save that for next time, but maybe that's something that's also on the table. Maybe they're one of the people that are in play to try and get the rights to Pinhead. Because that's just it. You really don't necessarily need all the rights in the world. And New Line knew that. That's why when they did this back in 92 or 93, whatever it was, when they bought the rights to Jason, they knew they didn't need the Friday the 13th name. They knew they didn't need all this other garbage to go with it. All they needed was Jason. So that's where that part's cut clear. And this is going to finish up what I was going to say before. That part at least is cut clean and dry. We know where Jason ends and we know where Jason begins. We know And what I mean by that is we know where the young Jason ends, and that's anything that has to do with the first film. And we know where the grown-up Jason begins, and that's anything that has to do with the second film on. Now, because anything that's established in the first film would then be off limits. And that's the same kind of problem they ran into, because I just talked to Adam Marcus about this. And I believe most of it made it into the interview, because a lot of that interview did make it out. So I didn't think I edited too much of it out, because if it was interesting, I wouldn't edit it out anyway. Where he was talking about where they were allowed to do certain things and they weren't allowed to do certain things because they didn't have the rights to Tommy Jarvis and they didn't have the rights to certain other things, but they did spring for the rights to Pamela Voorhees and stuff like that at that
and that's
time.
A pain in the ass. All those rights things. It's like when you start getting all these companies involved, and this is where I get pissed off. And I know that, Hollywood's a business. Okay, but out of everybody in Hollywood, is there a business person that has some kind of sensibility about film? Or is it just like, do they all hate film and just pretend that they like it so they can, do their jobs? That's what it seems like.
Unless you're making movies, the people who love movies spend all their money on movies, so they're broke. And the people who have money to make movies don't really give a shit about movies. They just know they make a lot of money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
I tried to say all that without making a mistake, but it was like a map of craziness. But it's true, and it kind of brings me right back around to my last point on this is the rights issue. Where it's at now is, okay, for the most part, I wouldn't worry. Okay, everybody's like, now at the outset, like what do we? It's a mess, yes, but I don't think I'd panic. Because I think Victor Miller, it's in his best interest to work with whoever, wherever, whatever, or he's not going to get paid.
Let's face it, and I'm going to be cruel here, and I don't mean to be. He hasn't really had a career. I mean, no, seriously.
Yeah, what else has he done outside of?
No, and it's from what I've heard out of his camp, which has been very little. I've even tried to reach out to get a hold of him. I don't know if you guys have over there.
No.
But it was like, as far as I know, he went on complete lockdown. He used to be really easy to get a hold of. Now he went on complete lockdown since this has happened. So I'm hoping he sprouts back up. But I'm under the understanding from what little did leak out of his camp that I know of was that he's more than willing, just wanted this to have this, like you said, because he didn't feel like he got his just dues from the success that Friday the 13th is. And yeah, you're right. He hasn't had a big career. But I think that the franchise kind of owes it to the guy a little bit in the end, because chances are he probably hasn't gotten any residuals outside of the first film, and those have been very minimal.
Well, in looking at his IMDb page, I stand corrected. Victor Miller has been busy. He completed writing Rock, Paper, Dead, Betrayal, which is now in pre-production. Eden Falls is in pre-production, and Friday the 13th, in parentheses, characters, has been announced for 2020.
Well, interesting. That might be the Warner Brothers project, though.
Let me look into that. I'll just look that up.
Please do. If you can do it now. If not, we can come back to this too. And we heard my puppy in the background there. Sorry, guys.
No, that's okay.
She's normally downstairs, but she just happened to be good today, so she's ruining that privilege.
It is a reboot of the classic horror film, and it will premiere 40 years after the original. So they're going to Halloween it.
Okay, who's the production company on it, or who's the studio?
Well, they're saying that the writers, Sean gets credit for the story, Victor gets credit for the characters. They're saying that New Line and Warner Brothers are the production companies.
Then that means Victor's already been talking to WB all this time,
probably. Yep.
And that's what I was just saying, and thank you, because that kind of supports what I'm saying, is that it's in the best interest of everybody, not just Victor Miller, to work together. And that was the kind of vibe I was getting out of his camp, was that no matter what, guys, don't panic. We're going to work together on this. This was more so just for me to get my piece of the pie like I should, kind of thing. And I don't disagree with him on that, because everybody I talked to, even people that are involved with the franchise, all kind of agreed that Victor was kind of given the short shaft. And and anybody who's worked with Sean, and you can get this quote right out of my interview, they have done similar things to them. So it's not above the realm of possibility that Sean Cunningham is a typical producer in Hollywood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not surprised. I was kind of figuring this was the way it was going to go, but I wasn't counting on it, because usually in Hollywood, these things are kind of they generally tend to side with the producers on these things. It seems like
money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
So I don't think this is going to affect as much down the road as we think, other than just it's going to have more Victor Miller involvement, I guess. And like you said, it's going to matter how
the business end is going to be very convoluted. And they have a team of lawyers, so I'm sure they'll work it out once they get to the point. It's just announced, which means that it could sit in development hell for years.
If this isn't the same one, it's an updated version or a completely different one than New Line / Warner Brothers just announced. Because let's be clear, guys, and I know Susan can probably back me up on this. New Line really doesn't even exist anymore. They're more or less just a label.
No, it's one of those things where it's like the familiar, like kind of like the monarchs anymore in England. You know, they're figureheads, and New Line is a recognizable, iconic name. It's legendary in horror because that's where all the good horror came from in the 80s. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well, yeah. Anytime I see,
go ahead.
Anytime I see New Line, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Yeah, not anymore though. No.
But it's funny how when it first came out, New Line was prominent. It became a hit. Everything was Warner Brothers on it. Just on the video and stuff, it was really odd because normally they slap it's just like some of these other companies. It's a label they slap stuff on. Since the Lord of the Rings controversy, New Line has pretty much not existed. And if you want to know what that's all about, you're going to have to look it up because I'm not going to get into it. But what I am going to get into is where the Jason rights lie right now, and how we know this is because we have a mini documentary we did a year ago that you can check out about this whole situation. But I'm going to give you the short version. New Line had the rights to Jason and Jason only up until roughly 7 or so years ago, at which time Paramount got a deal with them because they released a box set with all of the existing movies at that time. So that means both companies put them together and they worked out a deal. And in that deal also was the rights to Jason because they had reverted back to Paramount in that time since they hadn't made another movie or whatever it was in so long. And the remake had come about and all that kind of stuff. So everything was kind of back at Paramount then. Well, then the South Park rights movies were split up between Warner Brothers and Paramount. And it just so happened that Nolan was making Interstellar at Paramount, and Warner Brothers, being that they were kind of like Nolan's home, didn't want to get left out. So they made a big fucking convoluted fucking deal to make this shit even more convoluted than it already was, to where they got the rights back for 5 years and they could do whatever they wanted with Jason at Paramount, and New Line couldn't do a goddamn thing about it. They weren't going to be involved anymore because that was the big snafu battle fucking fight over the remake. And the reason we didn't get a sequel is because even though the movie was very profitable, they had to split the rights and everything was to the point where nobody got as much money as they wanted. And Paramount refused to make a movie that Warner Brothers was involved in. And Warner Brothers wasn't really keen on making a Jason movie that Paramount was involved in. But for them to be able to make the Friday the 13th reboot, they had to work together. Am I making sense?
Yep.
I know it's very fucking convoluted. So, okay, so they made this deal. So then after that happened, Paramount had the rights to make a Friday the 13th movie, free and clear, no attachment to Warner Brothers for 5 years. They waited the whole fucking time, announced 3 or 4 different projects that never got off the ground, and then used the excuse that the Rings sequel or whatever it was didn't do well.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why they didn't want to do it. That wasn't the case at all. Because I'm sorry, at times you can make one of these Friday the 13th movies on a weekend with a pack of bubble gum and a couple teenagers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all you really fucking need.
Well, and like the Ring movies, like those are so much CG, and they have such a they're kind of a different audience.
And exactly, that was the next point I was going to say. And not only that, they're a completely different audience when it comes to horror. They're 2 different subgenres, so you can't even go by that. So it was just nothing but excuses. And I think even a few people come out later and said, yeah, it was a bunch of excuses because they knew the rights were coming up and they didn't want to fucking get themselves starting a franchise they couldn't get into. They didn't want to invest in a first movie they weren't going to be able to cash in on sequels. So that was the only reason we didn't get a movie, because they didn't get off their butts in time to get it done, so they didn't have enough time to cash in on it. At which point now New Line Cinema is back. The rights are back at New Line Cinema, so that's where shit's sitting now at Warner Brothers. Now that Victor Miller has these rights, Sean has certain rights. This is where the Friday the 13th deal may be coming in. The question is, though, will it have the Friday the 13th name? Because that's whether or not Sean actually carries it, I believe, with his company now, which I can't believe. I can't believe I forgot the name of it. It was on the tip of my tongue, but he has his own production company, so that he actually owns the rights to that now. So now everything's away from Paramount is basically what I'm trying to get to. Paramount has zero interest in this anymore outside of the classic films. The video game situation probably comes in because they're using a bunch of shit from the classic films. That copyright ended. They knew about it, not just a couple months in advance. They knew about it years in advance. They knew about it before they even started this fucking game, because Sean Cunningham told them flat out, you have until this date to get this shit done, because the rights revert and no longer do we have the right to do anything related to the original films anymore. Paramount owns those. I do not. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you get into the overseas portion of this shit, and this is where Andre is going to come in later. And I'm not going to get too much.
One second before you get into this. Sean's
sure.
production company is Crystal Lake Entertainment.
That's a new one. Then that's not the one that used to own it. That must be a new entity they made. I can't remember the name of the old one, but it's the same company that he did all the classic movies under. And for a while, the video actually had the label of the company on it, and I can't for the life of me remember it, but they must have reverted to that name or something to that effect, or that's a company they set up specifically for Friday the 13th, because it's a completely different name than that. I can't think of what the hell it is, because he changed it to Cunningham Productions, I think, for a while too. It was something else completely though before, but regardless, that's not even fucking important. Point is, now you get to the overseas rights. Overseas, completely different entities own the rights over there. And logically, or at least theoretically, I mean, Andre has said, overseas, they could make Friday the 13th movies with Jason, all the whole thing. And as long as they're not released in the US, they can do it.
Oh, yeah. They've
done it with Evil Dead. All over the place. Yeah.
They've done it with Evil Dead. Like in Italy, believe it or not, for you people that follow that franchise, did you know David Hasselhoff made an Evil Dead 4 in Italy?
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bad. I have seen part of it. It's bad, but it's like, it's so bad. It's good. It's very funny. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's.
Oh, shit. Mecca.
But yeah,
I think that was made for us.
Yeah. Check that out. Because yeah, they've done that with Evil Dead, and it's called something Casa. Obviously Italian.
Okay, I gotta say this. Otaking, I'm gonna really ruin your name, and I apologize. Otaking Mikahani. Sorry. What we're saying is Victor Miller has absolutely nothing to do with the game. As far as my understanding was, the rights were going to revert way back before this Victor Miller situation even came up.
Yeah.
Because of what I just said was, Paramount knew they had this 5-year window to work with, at which point that window closed. New Line got the rights back to Jason, and then to make a deal to work with anything future-wise that had to do with the franchise, you had to deal with Sean Cunningham. And Paramount, though, retained the rights to all the classic films. So anything that had to do in the game with the classic films, which is the whole game, could not be updated, changed, moved, whatever anymore after that date. They knew about that going into this project when Sean Cunningham came on board. He told them up front. And that's what some people are trying to get out there. And I think that's going to be something we're going to concentrate on our mini doc in, because that's something that people aren't really talking about. And I've only seen a few YouTube people bring up. And it's kind of true if the stuff they found is real, and I believe it because it makes sense.
Oh yeah, that's everything I've heard
too. If they knew this window was closing on this specific date, then why did they promise all this stuff to all these people? And now I think they owe an apology and an explanation and other things to that fact. And what I'm saying is Victor Miller has nothing to do with the other. So there's been this smear campaign against Victor Miller, and I'm pretty sure which camp is responsible for that. But now I'm hoping that the hatch has been buried now that he won the case. And if what Susan's reading me is true and this deal has already been made, this sounds to me like they're already shaking hands and making deals. If I'm not mistaken, right? From what you just read off IMDb, it was IMDb, right?
Yeah, it was IMDb. And if you have Pro, you can probably go in there and get the details on it. What sketchy details there are. But yeah, I mean, it's announced. But once again, like I said, announced doesn't mean will happen. Announced means, yep, because for all intent purposes, Bubba Nosferatu has been announced.
Right.
But we could be in development hell. And that's what happens. Yeah.
Endless DC movies.
Yeah. Development hell. Yeah, exactly. And that can last in perpetuity, depending upon if they can't agree, if they don't get the correct script. I mean, Rob Zombie's been sitting on a Groucho Marx biopic for 3 years now.
Right, and that's just it. It's like, I mean, I really don't see where, and we brought this up before with, just to get back what I was saying real quick was, we found this out before. Everybody was blaming the Emoji Movie for Popeye not happening when that wasn't the case. And I think that's the same situation here with Victor Miller. You guys got to remember, Victor Miller, all he was doing was going for the rights to the first movie, which basically don't have shit to do with anything because New Line had the rights to Jason anyway.
Yeah.
Is what I was getting at, so it was like those rights were already convoluted as it was. And hopefully now, if we're reading this correctly, that this is much to do about nothing on that part. Now, the video game is a completely different situation altogether.
Yeah.
And that can be possibly fixed in so many ways, but I don't know what area they're at. And I don't know if Random knows anything about what's going on in their camp, if anything yet. But I know there's not much more.
The last I know is that like they're just kind of rushing out patches and fixes, but they're not allowed to update any content. Like they have Uber Jason, but they're not allowed to release him, and they have all these other things, but they're not allowed to release them anymore. And that was the last I heard. But if there's anything else out there that anybody does know about it,
yeah, we keep up with that at 1428 because we had some players that were on staff, and it's been kind of quiet with it.
Yeah,
except for the bitching. So I don't know where they're at with the game.
Yeah, the last time they keep updating it like 3 gigabytes at a time, which is a pretty huge patch because the game was only about 3 gigabytes in the first place. But yeah, from my understanding, it just seems like they are only allowed to update like technical patches, fixes, bug fixes, performance issues, stuff like that. And this is why people are so pissed, because they have the code for like Uber Jason from Jason X, for example. I keep bringing him up, and we aren't allowed to get him, and we're not allowed to get some of the other things that they've been working on and been developing. Yeah, and it sucks.
That could still happen. I'm sure they just got to make a deal with New Line now and Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham.
Well, but I don't think they will, because the player base isn't there. I don't think the money's there.
I think that's what the problem is they've kind of moved on.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of getting to. And I said that the other night was that wasn't one of their major quote unquote updates that they laid out some new thing that bugged the hell out of everything just so they could show off for some other company and get another job down the road. So they were creating themselves a future instead of worrying about this game at hand.
That was another one of the things that I have heard. Yeah.
I kind of lay it out there. Sorry, guys. That's what we do here at Midnight Set. Sorry.
I mean, yeah.
If anybody can prove me wrong, go ahead. It's just like.
No, unfortunately, we probably can't at this juncture. But it would probably be in Cunningham and Miller's interest to work together. I mean, they can make a shit ton of money if they do a proper Friday the 13th movie. And everybody loves money.
Well, I think like with any of these movies, if they just make it good, then it will print money, especially with these horror franchises. I was just out shopping today, and every store I see is Jason and Freddy, and Pennywise. But yeah, those are the big ones. And
are
Chucky.
You kidding me? Hallmark?
Yeah, Hallmark carries camp. They've got a little model of the camp. Silver Lake, and they've got Crystal Lake. I'm sorry, and they've got little plush, cute Freddy and Jasons. Yeah.
Oh
I got plush ones, but I don't think they're made by Hallmark.
No,
I'm sorry. It took me a second there. I had to pick my jaw up off the floor.
Yeah, Hallmark.
I don't have the money.
I know. I keep saying that's all there are. I have plush Freddy and Jasons. They're not the little cute ones.
That's official now. They are the new Dracula and Frankenstein's monster.
And it's true.
They're so much fun too. Like they are the most iconic, recognizable. I still buy stuff from both franchises. I don't care about a lot of these new monsters because they don't really have any. And we were talking about that last week. They don't really have any brand recognition, any franchise recognition. And that's what we have. We have Freddy, Jason, sometimes Leatherface, Michael Myers on T-shirts everywhere.
Michael Myers is like everywhere now with everything. And the way they're projecting Halloween is going to open at they're lowballing it. They're saying 55. They may have changed it, but here's the thing. I bet you Friday the 13th, they're watching to see how Halloween does. Let's see how it gets fast tracked. If Halloween scores big the way everybody thinks it's going to, because let's face it, we've been hearing about this since 2017. And, you know, if that hits, I bet you they start fast tracking Friday the 13th.
Probably. And this kind of goes back to my rule of
kind of similar.
Well, it kind of goes back to my rule of how much do I hear about the movie versus how well it's going to do. If I don't see trailers and I don't see anything or hear anything about it, then it's going to probably not do very well and it'll be kind of brushed aside, swept under the rug, whatever. This Halloween movie we've been hearing about forever. I see trailers all over the place. It is marketed. It is going to be at least something that people are going to go see.
Oh yeah, it's going to be good or not. It's going to be an event. Like I remember Amityville Horror in '79. The freaking lines were around the block to see this movie. They've been marketing the crap out of Halloween. You had the UK Heritage trailer, which is my favorite. You now have the TV spot that uses the original cheer from 1978.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're just inundated with Halloween. So, yeah, it's probably going to kick ass. And then the next thing we're going to get is Glass. And then we're going to get It. We're going to start hearing about It in January. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably when we'll get the trailer. Once we start hearing. So,
we'll get a trailer for It.
Hopefully, we'll get like a nice horror.
When is it supposed to be out? Late August?
No, September. Just like the It from 2017. It's going to be September.
So they didn't move it up at all, huh?
Nope. Nope. That's
okay. So yeah, we might not get a trailer till January at least. Then maybe with Christmas movies we might.
I imagine we'll get some sort of a teaser.
They changed the window, and most people bitch about it now, and they don't understand that. Or at least they think they missed this story that happened, 2-3 years ago? Susan might remember this.
Okay.
They changed the regulations of when you could release a trailer. And the only exception is that the studios could only pick like 1 or 2 movies a year that they could have more than a 6-month window.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
But they're not allowed.
I do remember that.
Because they were complaining about too many trailers getting released too early. It was some bottlenecking.
Yeah.
But it was like now because that and I think the theater chains were bitching about it. I can't remember the actual reason behind it. If somebody out there else remembers it, please, because it was so long ago now. I'm trying to remember the details. But basically, yeah, they're not allowed to release anything more than a 30-second teaser before 6 months before the film, and then 4 months before the film, they're allowed to do a full trailer. Like they're regulating this now. Before there was no regulation. You could release a teaser, a trailer, whenever the fuck you wanted.
Yep.
Excuse my French because we've been good to this point, but
yeah.
Well, I don't think anybody's counting.
I don't think so. But we got 88 viewers. I'm so impressed. That's awesome. I'm so glad you guys have joined us so far, and I want to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
I know we haven't been very active in the chats, but I am reading your chats here and there. But we get so engaged in the conversation, it's really tough to.
I've been talking away.
But if we get time here at the end, yeah, I see you guys have been popping in. That's great too. And I want to thank, of course, Tyler Bioshock and Mary Ashby for being our wrench wenches for the afternoon on this show. We got to come up with a better name for you on the horror show. We got to come up with a better name for the horror show.
Yeah.
We took in a few of the suggestions. We haven't really gotten too many yet. I think the one we were really leaning towards was Nightmare on Midnight's Edge with 1428.com, if that was the one, I'm not mistaken. But if there's any suggestions you guys have, let us know. And
yeah, let us know.
What we want you to do though is wait till after the show, because I know some of you guys gave us some great ones in the chat last time, but people aren't able to vote on them then. So if you can wait till after the show or go to last week's show and put them in that show, and then we can see how many people like them, and then we'll try and gauge that as how we kind of figure it, and maybe we'll pick 2 or 3 of the best ones, and then we'll figure out something from there. But we really want to make it, something that fits, plus something you guys. Otherwise, for now, I think that's the top pick. But if you guys got something better, please let us know. But wait till after the show or go back and do it to the last one so we can actually gauge it in some kind of vote. So, yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, moving on.
Well, we have to get that in. We need a name. We need to get a name out there.
It is, because I sat here for like 2 minutes. I'm like, what am I going to call this thing? What am I going to call it?
Jason Lee suggests the Goddess of Gore, or I guess the Goddesses of Gore.
Goddesses of Gore? I'm not against that.
That's pretty awesome, Jason Lee. I've never been called a goddess before, but
Actually, I'm not adverse to that, since I'm kind of like, I guess you could call me more like an MC. I'm outnumbered by the women. Let's not totally come down. I'm not against that.
That kind of has a ring to it. I'm kind of getting partial to that one.
Yeah. I think we could use that. That's
Dynamo75 asks us random, are we ready to watch Venom in the theaters?
No.
Not ready, because I'm going to pay for another movie, and if I do go see it, and
I
admit it.
Don't give one shit about Venom. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I love Tom Hardy, but this character is not the one that they should be going with. It's not really, it didn't do well when Sam Raimi tried it. It's not to say it won't do well now. The one that everybody wants is Mysterio, and I know this isn't horror, but now we have Jake Gyllenhaal, and I've seen the stills, and I'm like, really? That's Quentin Beck? Seriously? Man in Disguise? Hell no, not my Quentin Beck. But that's the one everybody wants.
Yeah, sorry, I'm super distracted by the chat here. Somebody put, Blue Cat 42 Midnight Horror Video Show After Dark.
That sounds like a softcore porn with like Linnea Quigley and Barbara Crampton or something. Yeah, or Elvira, or Elvira wouldn't do that.
It also kind of reminds me a little of like Rocky Horror Picture Show or something.
Oh, true. Yeah. Yeah, I did have hair like magenta at one time, so
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But that's my take on Venom. I know it's probably not popular. But.
Yeah, it's just, it looks so much. It looks like just CG nonsense. I have such a rule about too much CG in a movie, and I don't like superhero movies to begin with, so. I don't really care about Venom. I just don't care.
The thing of it is, though, is that some superhero movies do bleed into horror. You know, when you've like Hellboy and things, which, by the way, the first look poster has come out with David Harbour. So if you guys get a chance to see it, it's freaking amazing.
Yeah, I think I saw a picture of that.
Yeah. Yep,
with the horns and the
yeah, it's pretty amazing. That was pretty cool. And plus, another thing is Creepshow dropped. Greg Nicotero's new upcoming show from Shudder. They dropped the pictures. You can see them in Entertainment Weekly. We're also 1428 is going to have a story out on them. It's in the spirit of the old EC comics, in the spirit of Creepshow from 1982. So yeah, this is big news, and that kind of leads us into the Pittsburgh thing with Night of the Living Dead celebrating 50 years.
Oh, that's right.
Horror. And I gotta speak to my Pittsburghians because I went to school in Pittsburgh for a bit. Love ya, represent. A lot of good horror comes from Pittsburgh. You got Romero. You have John Russo. It's a hotbed for horror. And you have Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Yeah. What was the name of the movie? Bloodsucking Pharaohs from Pittsburgh?
I think it was, yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen that one too.
Yep, and Nightmare of the Living Dead spawned so many talented people. You got Nicotero, who we all know does TWD and is now involved with Creepshow. But Romero not only gave us a stable of talent like Roger Corman did with American International Pictures, he gave us things that Jordan Peele would follow up with and Get Out. basically the things that he was dealing with and under the guise of zombies pretty much told society at that time using zombies. And it was because of him that we have the zombies from TWD, that is what we think of when we think of zombies, is we go to George Romero. And he changed zombies pretty much forever, because prior to that, they were just things that moved.
They were the voodoo sort of. There were things from like White Zombie, Island of Lost Souls. I Walked with a Zombie. They were kind of these voodoo sort of Atlantic little small island sort of legends and stuff that came out of like voodoo lore and the island sort of religion lore.
Well, even George Romero didn't really like that they were called zombies. He didn't even refer to them as zombies. So I don't know zombies in any of the movies until one of the later ones, if that.
I mean, he was so instrumental in so many ways with that movie. I mean, 28 Days Later then, I think, revamped what zombies could be. And I kind of like their take on the zombies as actual things that you need to have to run the fuck away from and very fast. But Romero is what we think of to this day. And to have a movie that was a horror movie that had that much impact, 50 years later, we're still talking about it, shows me that horror is a genre that's always going to be around and can be used in ways that people might not even think.
Oh, yeah. It definitely changed not only horror movies, but movies in general. And Tim Salmons from the Digital Bits and I did a recent review kind of roundtable on the 50th anniversary Blu-ray that just came out from Criterion that is just magnificent. The Museum of Modern Art did a full 4K restoration on the film, and it looks just amazing. Perfect. I mean, and they restored the sound, and I mean, with all the nasty prints that have been out there over the years since the movies unfortunately was in public domain because of a snafu with the copyright at the time. You could find 100 different versions of the movie, and I think Tim and I did a study, just kind of a quick study to look around, and we both concluded that of all movies in history, that one has to have had more home video releases than any other.
Oh, absolutely. Now, am I mistaken in thinking that I can't remember the name of the company? I can't really think of the name of the company, but I remember when like Riff Tracks did their version, and they also had the colorized version. I think that whoever the company was, I can't remember who it was. They also spent a lot of time restoring it while they they restored the black and white while they colorized it. So
it's not a horrible version of it being in color. You're right about that. I don't think there's an HD version available, actually, unfortunately, but the Criterion one is just amazing. Oh, yeah. If you have not seen it.
Criterion, if you ever want good collections, they're the place to go because they lovingly take care of a film. You know, it's like they take your baby and they make it what it used to be and what it can be. And, you know, I have nothing but good things to say about them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you pay a little bit more for them, but they're definitely worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know how many versions of Night of the Living Dead I even have on DVD and box sets and like
plenty.
Horror box sets. It's one of those like, oh, it's a 50-pack. Here's Night of the Living Dead again. And they're always garbage. The sound's crap. The film's crap. But yeah, with a movie like this that's so important and historically, you know, it's just an icon of horror.
Yeah.
You kind of need the restoration. It's kind of like The Wizard of Oz. You know, it's one of those movies that's so iconic.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely finally getting its just due. It was treated like a midnight movie or a B movie or for so many years. And probably mostly just because of its copyright status.
And the way that it was shot, because it was it was groundbreaking. We never had a film shot like that. Horror films prior to that were studios. If you look at Roger Corman's AIP pictures, like The Raven and such, with Vincent Price and Jack Nicholson, a very young Jack Nicholson, production value. Even though Corman was on the fly, it still wasn't the shaky cam. It still wasn't that documentary feel. It was like, crap, this is happening near me right now. Lock the doors. Romero basically War of the Worlds it with Orson Welles when he scared the shit out of everybody in 1939 when they thought, oh my God, the world's ending, the Martians are coming. That's what he did with zombies.
I do have a script about that too. But yeah, you're right. You're totally right. And the weird thing about it all is all that George did was what Tarantino does.
Yeah.
He took because just to kind of give you some context, I recently talked to Tommy Lee Wallace. That's coming out, guys, here real soon, and you'll hear this bit in the portion.
Oh, cool.
He talks about there's only a few kinds of horror movies. There's the metaphysical / ghost story kind of thing, and then you have the slasher knife wielding maniac people. This was a pod people movie, but instead of it being aliens, instead of it being some parasite, it was us.
Yep.
It was us eating ourselves. He even Romero referred to as ghouls. That's why he didn't want anything to, the zombie thing. He never really liked it. He never really liked that attachment to it. But the guy spawned an entire subgenre onto itself. And then come full circle this many years later with The Walking Dead, no matter how you feel about it now, it's still just like you cannot have that without Night of the Living Dead. It all starts there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then to bring up other points like you just said, Susan and Random, is like how different this movie was. Because even though it was shot in black and white, and maybe that's why a lot of people didn't take it seriously, you had a leading black man.
Yep.
Yeah.
You had social commentary that wasn't necessarily there at first that I think Romero really brought through even more when he realized that the guy he found to play his lead part happened to be black, and the civil rights movement just happened to be firing up all at the same time, like a lightning in a bottle kind of thing. And not to diminutize the civil rights movement in any way, shape, or form, because what I'm saying is all that did was accentuate the positive in this film, that you could have a black man, and guess what? It doesn't fucking matter that he's black.
Oh no.
Not one point in that entire fucking movie does it matter that he's black.
No,
you even have the perfect opportunity for the hickey white guy when they're fighting over a gun to turn around and go, "Give me the gun, you damn, you know what word," and they don't.
Yeah.
Why? Because it was never in the script, and it probably never came up. Because, like Romero said, he was just so used to working with black actors and black people, because being from where he's from, it's just, it just never occurred to him at first. And then he said one night, and I quote, I'm not going to be able to quote it, but I'm paraphrasing. He said one night, when they were on their way to either a final edit or to show the film, I can't remember which, he had the reels of the film in his lap. And on the radio was the announcement of Martin Luther King got shot.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, fuck. I got a black guy getting shot in the head at the end of my movie. Nobody's going to let me show this thing anywhere." And for a moment there, he thought nobody was ever going to see this movie. His career was over, because he had sunk so much into this, even though it was so piddly. Because at this point, they were making money by making commercials. And that's all he had really done, really, is commercials and a few odd and end things here and there. And I think some television or something like that. I don't know if you guys know better. But so, yeah, he was like just devastated, because he thought there's no way they're going to let me show this movie now. So it's like, I can imagine where this guy was at with this movie. It's like, I got this great thing, I'm doing this. And then all of a sudden, oh, shit. This civil rights thing's happening, and not only that, they shot Martin Luther King,
the
leader of this thing, and my main character is the leader of this troop of humanity. And you can almost subtext so much of the civil rights movement within the movie itself, and I could see where he's coming from. It's like this stuff wasn't just today. It's like we're reliving history all over again, not just through cinema and TV and media, but through life in general, with the way, not to get too political, but just the way America is right now and how divided it is. And whether it's a girl black thing or a whatever thing, it's, or a girl guy thing, or a vice versa, transgender, whatever you have, it's like all of a sudden here we are right back smack dab where we were 50 years ago. It's like we've gone nowhere, but we've gone right back to where we got stuck in rewind. But maybe now, where is this Night of the Living Dead we need? Where is the movie we need right now like this? They don't make movies like this anymore.
Well, no, and they wouldn't take a chance on a director They're so focused on their kind of studio reboots, remakes, the stuff that makes money, the stuff that they know they can market and flip for a quick buck. They're not gonna take a chance on something. I'm surprised something like Get Out was even made.
Well, Jordan Peele, I think, is going to be the person that tries to change that. He has another movie coming out, and very little details known about it. It's something like Us, I think, is what it's called. He's trying, at least. Yes, he is reimagining the Twilight Zone, but he's at least making an effort to be the modern day Romero. And I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there's people doing guerrilla filmmaking with their phones and stuff and trying to do it. But the problem is exactly what Mecca says. Yeah, all these companies are like, we want the next voice in horror, and horror's hot, and yada yada yada. But yet when somebody comes to them, you pretty much have to have a calling card, and you have to have a mentor. You have to have somebody backing you. Yeah. Like if you have the Night of the Living Dead, you almost have to get somebody like a Jordan Peele or a Sam Raimi to come and go, we've seen this. It's a great movie. Here's an open door. See what you can do with it. Because nowadays, you can't do what Romero did. You can't do like an Evil Dead or anything. You can, but you got to hustle like hell. And a lot of people don't want to do that hustle.
Well, even the Ash Vicious Evil Dead was kind of a sanitized version of the Evil Dead, if you really think about it. But I actually, that's a very good point, Random, to bring up Get Out. That's probably the closest equivalent to what Night of the Living Dead probably did. Mm-hmm. And success, and in the same kind of vein, in the same times, in the same ways, kind of. So that's I take back what I said. That's a very good example.
What's interesting about Get Out is this. Jordan Peele basically did what I always say about Hollywood is nothing is ever original. Okay, we're all recreating something, but it's the way you present it. And he presented the Stepford Wives. Basically,
Stepford. I said this earlier. It's Stepford Wives meets Guess Who's Coming to Dinner meets the last part of The Last House on the Left.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's
no,
not
to a point. No,
there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's not like a direct remake. It's not a direct reboot.
It's exactly what Tarantino does, which is exactly what Romero did. He took a Pod People movie, and he changed the Pod People. They're not from some outer space outside there. They're not others.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the whole thing is the Pod People movies came out of course, and I don't need to explain this to you guys, but some of the younger people in our audience may not remember or understand is the Pod People movies came out of the scare of communism in Russia. Yep. So this was a time when that was really hot too, but those kind of movies have kind of run their course. So like I said, instead of it being the others, instead of it being some outside force, like Invaders from Mars or Invading the Body Snatchers or what have you, it was us. It was our very own family members. It was our best friends. It was our brothers, our sisters, or these people that we thought we knew, but they're not the people we thought they are. It's a very, you could sit there and pick this movie apart all day long.
Yeah.
It is so layered with subtext. It's not even, it gets Dawn of the Dead gets so much, notice, and so does Day of the Dead to an extent. But the one that really doesn't, I think, sometimes is Night of the Living Dead. Because everybody's like, oh, yeah, it was a good little film. But now Dawn of the Dead, that's a movie. It's like, no, don't jump on that so much. Sure. I love Dawn of the Dead as much as the next guy. But Dawn of the Dead's pretty much all on its surface.
Yeah.
I mean, everything in that movie is right on its surface. There's no real picking it apart. It's right in your face. It's we're getting too much into consumerism. We're getting too much into ourselves. That's all right on the surface of the film. When you get to Night of the Living Dead, it's all buried in there. There's so much shit you could get into that, like I said, just picking apart the layers of how it's ourselves, eating ourselves, consuming ourselves, our family members, the people we think we knew, playing up that communism thing even more, because it's like, oh, it's not just people from the outside, it's the people you know. Because it's almost even more of a comment on McCarthyism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, because it's like, oh, okay, you thought the people that were the enemy were the Russians. No. It's the people in your right backyard. And McCarthyism was a direct attack on everybody that you knew. It wasn't just, these people that were nobodies in some other foreign country who spoke foreign languages. It was people you knew who lived right next door to you or lived in your own house. You had people getting accused constantly of being communist because they dated somebody who happened to have some affiliation with a communist party or something. You know, it was bad. And I think that was what it was I think it was a very big comment on that and the civil rights all at the same time. And sorry, I'm taking up a lot of time on this, but no, I love this movie. Is one of those movies I'll talk about all day long.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we do. Well, Willie Woodward here says he doesn't think that people don't want to do that hustle. He said he thinks the hustle got a lot harder and it's Herculean. Yeah, to some extent, Willie, it is Herculean. But I hate to use the old adage, where there's a will, there's a way.
Right. Well, the difference is it's easier to make a movie now. The harder part is getting your movie noticed because there's so many. Because before it was, if you could get your hands on a camera and make a movie, at least you could get somebody to look at it. If you had the movie done, if it was on celluloid, you're like, all right, I'll look at it, kid.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you got YouTube, you got everything out there to where they're like, you can do the most amazing fan film in the world or your own original thing. And the chances of somebody's eyes landing on it, unless somebody promotes it, is very slim.
Yep. You got to look for, if you have an idea, this is how you do it, Willie, and anybody out there. You have an idea. Write down the idea. Write it with somebody in mind. Have a character where you can see somebody playing said character. Try to get it to that person. Try to go through the proper channels of getting it to that person. If so, make a proof of concept film, not necessarily with the actor or actress, but just get a proof of concept film as a calling card. That's the way you do it. Now, like Tom was saying, we have thumb drives, all that stuff that you can do. You don't need to carry reels of film anymore, which were crazy. Yeah. But now there's so much that you can do, but write it for somebody in mind. And it might sound crazy, but you never know what can happen. You might not get that person, but you might capture somebody else that's interested. You just have to be persistent and you have to start opening doors. You have to do research. That's the big thing. You have to find out, okay, I want X actor to do it. Well, who represents X actor? And they're not going to take an unsolicited script. That's the big hurdle. You're going to have to try to do something where it isn't unsolicited, and that's involving, an agent, what have you, but there is loopholes around.
I was just going to say that's the one step that is actually doable.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're somebody who's serious about something like this and you think you actually have something that's, you believe in, and I know everybody believes in what they do or want to do. I've seen a lot of American Idol, just like everybody else. But truthfully, if you've had enough people that you trust their honest opinions tell you this is something good, you should do something with it, then the first channel is, and Susan brought it up, and that's the best thing to do, is get an agent or something to that effect, or get in touch with an agency, because that's the thing, is a lot of places will not touch anything unsolicited, no matter what. Nope. It's a liability issue. It has nothing to do with you personally, obviously. It's just if they do happen to accept something like that, and they happen to come out with a movie in a couple of years from now that's exactly like it because they probably stole your idea, then they'll get accused of stealing your idea and they don't want to get sued.
And here's another thing you can look for. If you're having trouble with the agent route, go to the guild and look at becoming a signatory.
There you go.
Some actors will look at signatories because I started looking into it.
That's another good idea.
That's another idea. I mean, there's ways to do this. It is Herculean. You're going to spend a lot of time. But if you look at any of the filmmakers that you admire, like George Romero, Wes Craven, those guys, they had to pay their dues. They worked hard, and they did stuff in other people's films. You may have to do that route, but the signatory is also another way of getting your product out there and getting people to look at it. If you can't get an agent, getting an agent is tough.
Yeah. It is, and I don't want to say it's going to be something you can do overnight.
Right.
But if you really truly have something and an agent will look at it, chances are you will get said agent, and said agent will be the key to doing what you want to do, the quickest route. but you also have the internet, and that's the best tool also as well. You have so many avenues of getting hold of certain people, but like Susan said, chances are you're going to have to deal with somebody else's agent too, which she's brought up, I think, in the past as well, to where it's going to be a roundabout, funny way of maybe doing it, but you never know what could happen. In the meantime, like she said, make a sizzle reel, or what you call it, proof of concept.
Proof of concept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of different ways you can do that. You don't even necessarily have to film your own thing. I know people who have just taken clips from other movies and put it to certain music, or poetry, or lines from their idea for a script, but it's other movies, just so that they can see the tone.
You can also do this too.
Yeah.
If you're a little concerned about that route, okay, maybe you can't become a signatory, maybe it's a money issue, whatever, you can start getting your product together and getting it out to film festivals and go that route, because you never know who might be there, who might be a development person that might see it. You have to start with some of the smaller films, but if you can get your product recognized by different film festivals and you start really working that hustle, that's another way to get your foot in the door.
Well, look at somebody like Kevin Smith with Clerks.
Yep.
He just went and got a lot of credit cards and charged, all of the film that he needed.
It's very fucking true.
Yeah,
and Burns did
$30,000, $32,000 after it was all said and done. Got paid $150,000 for the rights and a bunch of other stuff on the other end. From I can't remember how much he ended up in the end totally, but hey, it's possible. But that was in the day and age before the internet. That was what I was saying. That was at the point in your day in your life where you could just, as long as you could get a hold of a camera.
Mm-hmm.
And you put something on celluloid, people will look at it then, because it was not, you didn't have everybody coming in, look, I've got a movie.
And it was also a different era. The 90s, people wanted talent. They wanted your Kevin Smiths.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's like everybody thinks they can shoot a movie, and I hate to be the harbinger of bad news.
Idol thing, yeah.
Yeah. Not everyone is a writer. Not everyone is a filmmaker. And I know they say follow your dreams, but if you start getting a lot of roadblocks, yeah, you can surpass them, but maybe you need to heed that call, and maybe it's something else.
Yeah. So maybe your calling is like something behind the scenes. Maybe your strength is an editor. Maybe your strength is, something else. Maybe your strength is a production assistant or a prop master or any of these things. Like,
I wasn't chuckling at you. Sorry. I was chuckling at that Harv guy. He says, Bowfinger at 2000. And
Bowfinger.
I love Bowfinger.
Love that movie.
Favorite fucking movies. If you're a film fan, if you haven't seen Bowfinger, do yourself a day. Even if you're an Eddie Murphy or Steve Martin fan, do yourself a favor and see that movie. Eddie Murphy got robbed of an Oscar for that movie. Everybody says Dreamgirls. Fuck Dreamgirls. He got robbed for Bowfinger, man. Playing the two roles he did.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love that movie. Frank Oz directed. Great movie.
Keep it together. Mind head. I love it.
Yeah, who is it? What's his name plays the
Terrence
head of that?
Stamp.
Terrence Stamp, thank you. I knew I was trying to say, I was going to say Zod. Oh my God.
Chubby Rain. Oh my God. Make your chubby May.
My
chubby
favorite
rain.
Zod line. Why do you say that when you know I will kill you for it? The way he says it just blows. Lex Luthor, King of Australia. Show us the way. Anyway, so let's move on. We got one more quick story to get through because unfortunately, however, unfortunate for our horror viewer fans, but fortunate for Tribunal fans because Random and I have to get moving here soon. We got to get pretty and look good for the Tribunal. But yeah, that starts very shortly. So remember to pub crawl over there. But there is some exciting news you had for us, Susan. Now, I know you were real excited to share this with us. So I'm going to let you have the floor on this. And I'm sure Random doesn't have an issue with that either because she's not the hugest fan. So we covered that last week. But now you brought this up earlier about Bubba Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Now, what are the odds of that's not really happening, or maybe that's some mixed up news, or that's actually migrating and changing or morphing into what you're about to tell us? Go ahead.
Well, Don Coscarelli was at Beyond Fest this past weekend, and one of my contacts was there, and they shot me this Twitter tweet. They shot me a tweet where it was said on the panel that Don Coscarelli is interested in possibly making Bubba Ho-Tep into a television series. Now, I knew about this prior to Don saying anything because I talked to Joe Lansdale over the summer, and Joe had brought up that there was talk about doing a television series. Now, there's, Don still wants to try to make Bubba Nosferatu, but with IDW releasing Josh Jabkuga's comic book, Bubba Ho-Tep and the Cosmic Bloodsuckers, there's a dearth of material at this point of time where they could actually continue this story. And I know that Ella Joyce, who played the nurse, was also there. And Ella said, yeah, let's bring it. Let's, have them cast the nurse again. And I was like, well, Ella, does the nurse join Elvis in his quest? I mean, there's so many avenues. We do know this to be certain. We don't know if Don's going to pursue it. He said, he talked about it 2 years ago and said, everybody's telling me it should be a TV show. But maybe, maybe, I don't know, maybe it'll be a movie. He doesn't know the direction. But what we do know, and this is probably not very happy for some people out there, is that Bruce Campbell will not reprise Elvis. Now, that's not to say that he couldn't be approached with a television series, but I do know he doesn't want any kind of gig where he's responsible for the well-being of that show. He just basically wants to come on and do like he did on Lodge 49, episode arc, an occasional appearance. But Bubba Ho-Tep could very well be a TV series. There is some possibilities there. I know that Paul Giamatti for the longest time was interested in playing Colonel Tom Parker. Now, we probably won't get a Giamatti on a television show. I may be wrong, but yeah, this could very well be what Coscarelli might pursue, because apparently the route to a motion picture hasn't been very fruitful and hasn't been able to come together, either bad timing, either scripts, what have you. So yeah, this was kind of like big news for the horror community, because that movie is beloved by a lot of people.
Any word from any individuals on who may return in casting wise, or?
Well, Ella Joyce, who played the nurse, she's definitely interested. Now, Reggie Bannister was there. He played the shady rest home administrator. I don't know what Reggie's feelings are, because it didn't, he didn't say.
He was also in all the Phantasm movies, and he's one of Don's good friends.
Don Stable, yeah. Joe Lansdale and Don are still familiar, and I know Joe did Happen Leonard.
What about the big guy?
You just never know.
What about the big guy?
Which big guy?
Elvis.
Elvis. Well, at one time they were talking to Ron Perlman, but Perlman's pretty tied up in doing movies and such. I don't know. I mean, he did do SOA. He did do Sons of Anarchy. Like I said, I don't see the other big guy coming out for a series. I see him. Yeah, I see him doing now guest spots if it triggers his fancy, but it's going to take a lot to get him off his personal mountain. And Alan Sparks, it was a good movie. Could it be a TV series? I think it could be. If you like comics, pick up the IDW series, Bubba Ho-Tep and the Cosmic Bloodsuckers. Yeah, there's potential.
If Bruce Campbell, without Bruce Campbell, I don't know. I'm kind of like,
Yeah, I can't see getting super excited unless Bruce Campbell's Elvis again.
Know. Have you guys seen Michael Shannon play Elvis?
That's not a bad idea.
He's played Elvis, and yeah,
I did see it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm trying to
like I
place
said,
him.
I can't speak for Campbell. I'm not his publicist, so
of course, you know. I was trying to fish. I was trying to fish without actually.
Yeah, but I mean,
Because
from
we
what
didn't
I
cover
know,
that ahead of time. Yeah.
well, no, from what I know, what Bruce seems to be leaning toward right now is he's doing a big push for Lodge 49. They're trying to get that show renewed. That's why he's been in the news a lot. Plus, he's also promoting his Last Fan Standing. His heart lies here in that if it's something that he wants to do, he'll do it. Like he loved Lodge 49. Initially, he didn't want to do it, but now he's like, you never know. The captain could make a comeback if Lodge 49 gets picked up. And also, you know, his Last Fan Standing is important. He wants to do that. He wants the game show phase, and that's what he's working toward. And Dead Schooled, yeah, that's a dream, but he will not do Ash versus Freddy versus Jason. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that I don't. Well, that just with rights alone, I don't see happening. That's a pipe dream I don't see happening.
Well, they tried
I'm just
it.
looking at it as, yeah, oh yeah, but it was a nightmare logistically.
Yeah,
and
and plus Robert Englund wanted to be killed.
I think Sam was against it or something like that.
No, Sam was not. Sam and Bruce made a call, and Robert Englund was behind it, and he was like, yep, I want Freddy to die. So they all got on a conference call, and they started explaining the story, and there was a dial tone. So pretty much, yeah, that's how that went.
They weren't on board with the story then.
Nope, because they didn't want Freddy to die, and Englund was all for it.
Okay, so yeah, okay, all right. Well, anyway, I've never heard that story before, so
yeah.
But I don't want to rush us off with this, but that is interesting news. But I gotta admit, I do agree with Eric Draven that a Phantasm TV show would be a much better idea, especially now that since sadly the tall man has passed. We can actually recast that, I guess, in some way, shape, or form, and try again, start over with a really interesting TV show.
Don is looking at the Phantasm series again, so there's like a myriad of possibilities for Don Coscarelli to show up somewhere.
So in a Phantasm reboot / whatever kind of series, even if it is a sequel to a point, but I don't know if I could want to, again, with Robert Englund. He's one of the few other ones where it's just very difficult to do without the tall man. But yeah, I don't know if there's any Phantasm fans out there, but I agree with that anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, any final thoughts on this show? I don't mean to kill it so soon, but we definitely got to get rolling. So any quick questions or comments that we're going to address, ladies, or did you have anything else to share or add to the show? Or I don't know. I think it's been a pretty good success. We've held quite a few viewers.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thanks for giving us a chance.
Right. And hopefully there's even more of you next time. So spread the word, of course, just like Susan and Random and I try to do. Let them know when we're on. We're trying to plan to make this every week. The same kind of thing, I think, is the plan.
And what horror topics do you guys want us to talk about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Not just current news, but like what other stuff? Like, I mean, we really got off on a tangent with the Nightmare. You said it too. Now I'm saying it. Night of the Living Dead. Nightmare of the Living Dead was said before on accident. I know that because we were just talking about Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff too. So that's obviously what happened. And I was thinking of that. I was going to make fun of it, but no, I didn't. I just made myself look like a boob. But anyway, Night of the Living Dead. I mean, yeah, we could get into classic films more so if you guys want to. Because we know I'm Random and I kind of went into this. We want to do this, but that's why it was a big deal for me to get Susan on board and stuff like that, was because I'm not as up to date on a lot of the current horror movies because I'm just not into them anymore. Unless they come up with something like Halloween that's coming out here that I'm into. I don't care for I've seen The Exorcist. I don't need to see the possession of whoever else.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the Ring style, like
the Japanese sort of
Conjuring / haunted house movies all that much, here and there maybe, but not that often. So my love of this franchise generally deals with pod people and slashers and masks, to take us back to what I said before. So I mean, I know
at 1428, I'm kind of like the iconic horror person. I mean, that's why I talk to like D. Wallace and people like that, and of course Bruce. because I pretty much, that's my specialty, because that's where I grew. I grew up during the 80s. So all those movies I've seen actually in theaters. So it's kind of in my wheelhouse.
When somebody said this in the chat, I'm trying. Oh yeah, here it is. Phil Arcanis, get Kurt Russell to play Elvis. Yep, I'm on board.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you get him to replace, if you get him to replace Bruce Campbell, I will consider it. There you go. There's a done deal. All right, folks, I gotta do this real quickly. Sorry to do this though. I want to thank Random and Susan for joining me. Susan, of course, you can find on 1428.com and on Nerdrotic, is where we're going to head over right now to do the next tribunal with Random 42 or Game User 42. Random Game User 40.
Mega Random 42.
Mega
whatever you can probably find me under.
I can say by now I think it's switched over. So you can find her at Mecha Random, and of course you can just click on the link there in the chat.
That's for the tribunal.
Yeah, everybody. Let's head over to our Nerdrotic channel for the tribunal, and we'll see you there. I want to thank Susan once again for her time, because we know you have a lot to do, and it's always great to have you.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be here. And thanks to everybody in the chat for listening to us and tuning in.
Yes.
Because we know that there's a lot of horror podcasts you could be listening to, and we appreciate you choosing us.
And I was just about to say something similar, but she said it almost best, so I'll just say this. Thanks for joining us, as always, here at Midnight's Edge After Dark. Oh, I want to thank Mecha Random, of course, as always, too. I forgot.
Oh, yeah.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, guys.
I didn't even overlook you there. But anyway, yes. Hail the tribunal. Yes, let's head on over there, guys. Join us on the tribunal. Let's go. Hail the tribunal. Anyway, thanks for joining us on this horror podcast. Share, like, subscribe. Take care.